Hello everyone, this is part 8 on how to make a tower defense game in Scratch. In this tutorial, I'll be creating a fully functioning shop for the turrets. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 7 yet, check them out, links are in the description below. Anyways, let's get started. So first off, I can click this turret icon right here to purchase my turrets, but I'm thinking of adding a button instead that expands a shop where I can buy turrets. So to do that, I'm going to first create a new sprite. And this is going to be our shop button sprite. So for this one, I'm going to click the rectangle tool and then make a simple rectangle button. And okay, so now I have my shop button, and now I'm going to go inside of the code. And I'm going to start by going to events and drag a when flag clicked. And I'm going to make the button start over here. So that's around X 231 and Y 146. So I'm going to drag a go to XY block under the when flag clicked, and then I'm going to type in 231 and 146. Alright, and just in case, I'm going to go to looks and grab a show. And now I'm going to go inside of control and drag a forever loop, and then I'm going to check if the button is touching the mouse pointer, and if the mouse is down, then I'm going to open the shop on the right over here. So I'm going to drag an if else, and I'm going to check if touching mouse pointer. Then I'll go to looks, and first I'll drag a set color effect to block, and I'm going to first set the brightness to something like 30 if it's touching the mouse pointer, and then inside of the else I will set the brightness effect to 0 so that it goes back to normal. And then inside of the if touching mouse pointer, I'm going to drag another if, and I want to check if mouse down. Then for now, I'm going to go inside of events and then broadcast some type of message to open the shop. So I'm going to drag a broadcast block inside of the if mouse down, and I'm going to broadcast a new message and call this something like open shop. Alright, so now if we click the button, then the button should be broadcasting the open shop message, but of course right now nothing is receiving the open shop message. So I'm going to create a new sprite, and then this sprite is going to be the shop background that appears when the open shop message is broadcasted. So I'm going to create a simple rectangle with a white fill, and I will center this. And I think I want this shop background to appear on the right over here, so I might make it a bit larger. So something like this. Alright, so this is going to be our shop background sprite, and I'm going to go inside of the code, and I'm going to first drag a when flag clicked. Then of course we want to hide the background, and then I'm going to go inside of control, or actually events, sorry, and then I'll drag a when I receive open shop. Then I will show the sprite and show, and then I'll make the sprite go to this position, so that's X 202 and Y negative 12. So I'm going to go inside of motion and drag a go to XY block. Alright, and I also want to make this shop background sort of see-through, so I'm going to go inside of looks and drag a set color effect to block and change this to set ghost effect, and that changes the transparency. So if I try something like 40, then it should be pretty see-through. Okay, maybe a bit less, so something like 15. Alright, maybe 10. And okay, I think that's pretty good. So now if I just try it again, and if I click this button, then as you can see, the shop screen appears on the right side. But of course, I also want the shop button to move to over here when the shop is opened. So inside of the shop button sprite, I'm going to go to events and drag a when I receive open shop. Then I'll make the shop button go to somewhere over here. So I'll drag a go to XY block, and I'll decrease the X to something like, let's try X 200. Okay, maybe a bit less, maybe X 170, okay, 130 or 120, okay, let me try 130, and okay, I think that's pretty good. So now when the shop is opened, the button should appear right here. So let's try it out, and when we open the shop, then as you can see, the button moves to right here. So now that we are able to open the shop, of course, we also want to be able to close the shop. So inside of this same button sprite, I'm going to go to Events and create a new message. So drag a broadcast block and then new message. And I'll call this something like close shop and then click OK. And I'm also going to have to go to variables and create a new variable. And I'll call this something like shop open. And then I'll keep for all sprites and then click OK. And under the when flag clicked, I'm going to first set shop open to no. But once the button receives the open shop, then of course we want to set shop open to yes. So shop open to yes. All right. And now inside of the if mouse down, we want to go to control and then drag an if else. And then we want to check if the shop open is equal to no, then of course we want to broadcast the open shop message. Else, if the shop open is equal to yes, then we want to broadcast the close shop message. All right, so now for the close shop, we want the button to go back to its original position and to hide the shop screen. So inside of the button, I'm going to go to Events and drag a when I receive close shop. Then I'm going to set shop open to no and make the button go back to its original position. So let's drag a go to XY block and I'm going to type in X 231 and Y 146. All right, and now for the shop screen, I'm going to drag a when I receive close shop. Then I'm going to simply hide it. All right, so now if we try it out, once we click it, then the shop opens, and if we click on the button again, then the shop closes, like so. All right, and I think I want the button to point the other direction when the shop is open. So inside of the button sprite, when I receive open shop, I'm going to make the button point the other way. So that would be point in direction -90, like so. As you can see, now it points to the right. However, normally, of course, I want it to point towards the left. So that would be point in direction 90 under the when flag clicked, and also under when I receive close shop. All right, so if we try it again, then the button points towards the left, and once we open the shop, then the button points towards the right. All right, cool. So now that we have our shop done, we want to put this turret icon inside of the shop. However, I'm actually going to first make some changes to this turret sprite over here because I don't want the actual turret as a part of the shop. Instead, I'm going to create a turret icon sprite and make that part of the shop and make the turret icon sprite create clones of this actual turret whenever I want to buy one. And what I said might sound a bit confusing, but having a separate icon sprite will make it much easier for us to add different types of turrets to the game. So to add our turret icon sprite, I'm going to create a new sprite. And inside of the costumes, I'm going to go over to the turret sprite and select this, Control C or copy, and then go inside of the turret icon sprite and Control V or paste. And then for the base, I also want to copy this and then paste it in here. I'm going to send it to the back, and there we go. This is going to be our shop icon for this turret. And now inside of the code, I'm going to first drag a when flag clicked, then I'm going to hide it, and then I'm going to go to Events and drag a when I receive open shop. Then I will show it. And let's see, I'll make the sprite go somewhere over here. So I'll go to Motion and drag a go to XY block. And I'll try X like 200 and y 100. Okay, and I also want the turret to be much smaller, so inside of looks, I'm going to drag a set size to block, and I'll try setting its size to something like 50. Okay, and I'll make the turret go somewhere a bit to the left and slightly more up, so maybe x 195 and y 110. Okay, maybe a bit more to the left, 194, maybe 192, or 188. Let's try 190, and alright, cool. And now, of course, once we close the shop, we also want to hide this turret icon. So inside of events, I'm going to drag when I receive close shop, then hide. And now we don't want to show the actual turret anymore. So inside of our turret sprite, let's make it hide instead of show when the flag is clicked. So drag a hide. And let's also do the same for the base. So inside of the base sprite, let's make it hide. Alright. And now we want this turret icon to actually create clones of the actual turret. So inside of the turret sprite, let's move this purchasing code into our turret icon sprite. So I'll drag this forever loop inside of our turret icon. Alright, and now we can delete this purchasing code from the turret sprite. So let's drag this and then delete it. Okay, and then inside of the turret icon sprite, let's drag this code under the when I receive open shop. And we do not need the set mouse action to variables. So let's take these out. And we can also delete this mouse action variable from our sprite. And instead of an if else inside of the if mouse down, let's change it into just an if. So if mouse down. And I'm also going to go inside of operators and drag an and. So we want to check if not cache is less than 50, then we want to create a clone of the actual turret. So inside of control, let's drag a create clone of myself block, put it inside of the if mouse down, and change this to create clone of turret. Alright, and now let's also drag in the change cache by -50 after that. And now everything should be fine. So let's take out these blocks. And now inside of the actual turret sprite, the turret used to call this place turret block inside of its own sprite. However, now since the turret icon is creating clones of this turret sprite, we have to call this place turret block once a turret clone is created. So under the when I start as a clone, I'm going to go to my blocks and drag the place turret block right under there. Alright. And I actually want to change this name to something more clear because this block means that the turret is actually just bought. So I'm going to change this to buy turret instead of place turret, and then click OK. Alright. And then inside of this buy turret block, I also want to go to variables and set the mouse action to selected. And then I'm going to drag it inside of here. And now everything should be fine. And lastly, we do not want to create clone of myself once the turret is bought, because the turret icon sprite creates clones of the turret. So inside of the actual turret sprite, let's take that out. And now we should be good. So let's try clicking the green flag. And once we buy a turret, then okay. So it seems like the turret and the turret base are not showing, and that is actually because I hid the turret and turret base earlier. So of course, once the turret clone is created, we want to go to looks and show the turret. So I'm going to drag this inside of the buy turret, and also I want to show the base. So inside of the turret base sprite, let's drag a show once a clone is created. Alright, so let's try it out. Once we click this turret icon sprite, then as you can see, we have a turret. Alright, cool. And it seems like the turret icon is purchasing more than one turret. So inside of our turret icon sprite, let's go to Control and drag a wait until, not mouse down. So wait until, and then sensing, not mouse down. And then let's drag this inside of the if mouse down. Alright, and now we should only be able to purchase one turret at a time. And okay, so it seems like the turret is appearing over here. So inside of the turret sprite, let's actually take out this wait until mouse down block. And now everything should work. So if we try it, then as you can see, we have a turret. Alright, cool. And now the last thing we have to do is to update this turret clone number. Because right now, as you can see, we can't select a range for turret number 2. And that's because the turret clone number, which is set for this sprite only, is always set to 0 and then 1 for every single turret that is purchased. So every turret clone has the same turret clone number value. So to fix this, let's actually set the turret clone number variable instead of changing it. So let's set the turret clone number to, and then inside of your lists, let's grab a length of, and then let's grab the turret X list. Alright, and then instead of the change turret number by 1, let's set the turret clone number to length of turret X. And let's also drag a +1. So instead of operators, I'm going to drag a plus, drag the length of on the left side, and then add 1. So now each turret should have a different turret clone number, because every time we place down a turret, the length of this turret X list increases, so each turret will have a different value for this variable. Alright, cool. So let's try it again. So if I try placing 2 turrets and select the second one, then as you can see, it works. Alright, cool. So now the turret purchasing seems to work. Like so. Alright, and now I sort of want to add a name and description for the turrets once I hover over this turret icon. So I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'm going to select this text, and then I'm going to type something like, let's call our turret the basic turret. So I'll just say basic, and then I'll have another line for the cost, which is 50. And I'll make this text a bit larger and the cost a bit smaller. Alright, so something like this. Okay, and then I'll make both of these texts a bit darker, like this. Alright, okay, so now I want this text to show somewhere over here when we hover over the turret icon. So I'll place it right here. And I'll grab a when flag clicked. Then of course we want to hide this text. However, once the shop is opened, then we want to show it. So let's show. And then once of course we close the shop, we want to hide it. Alright, and then I'll also make the text go to right over here. So I'm going to go to motion and drag a go to XY block and make it go to X 189 and Y negative 147. Alright, and of course we only want this description to show once we hover over this turret icon. So inside of the turret icon sprite, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to name all of these sprites. So turret icon, shop button, and shop screen. I'm going to also name this one turret description. Okay, so inside of our turret icon sprite, let's create a new variable. I'll call this something like shop description number. Okay, and then I'll select for all sprites and then click OK. And then inside of the open shop message, I'm going to first set the shop description number to 0. So 0 is going to mean that the shop description does not show up. And then inside of the if touching mouse pointer, then I will set shop description number to 1. And then inside of the else, I'll set shop description number back to 0. Alright, and then inside of the turret description sprite, inside of the open shop, I will go to control and grab a forever loop, and I will check if the shop description is equal to 1. Then of course we want to switch costume to costume 1 and also show it, else we want to hide it. And now if we try it out, once we open the shop and hover over it, as you can see, we have our description. Alright, cool. And I think inside of the shop screen, I'm going to add a gray line for the shop description. So let's see, I'll add it somewhere over here, I think. So I'll hold down Shift and then draw a line. And I'll make the outline a bit thicker, like this. And I will have a dark gray outline. And there we go. And now for the description, I'm also going to make the text a bit smaller. So I will decrease the text size. And I'll move the cost a bit more downwards. Alright, and now I think this looks a lot better. And now we have a working description. Alright, cool. And lastly, inside of the turret icon sprite, I also want to close the shop when I purchase a turret, because this way I can see the entire map. So after we purchase a turret, I am going to broadcast the close shop message. Alright, and I'm also going to change the brightness effect of the icon when we hover over it. So inside of looks, I'm going to set the brightness effect to something like, let's try 15, and then else, if the mouse pointer is not touching the icon, then I'm going to set it back to 0. Alright, and now it should look a bit better. As you can see, the icon becomes a bit bright, and the shop also closes when we purchase a turret. Alright, cool. And of course, one last thing I want to fix is that I want this shop to go in front of our placed turrets. So inside of my shop screen, when I receive the open shop message, I'm going to make the turret background go to the front layer and maybe go backwards like 2 layers, because of course I want the turret icon to go in front of the shop screen background. So inside of the turret icon, I'm going to make it forever go to the front layer, and that should be fine. And for the description, I'm also going to make it forever go to the front layer. And lastly, for our turret, so in our actual turret sprite, let's make it go backwards maybe a few more layers, something like 5 layers. And inside of our base, let's make it go backwards 7 layers. Alright, so let's try it out. Once we place down a turret, the shop screen, as you can see, is now over our placed turrets. Alright, cool. And actually, the final thing we have to fix is this description, because as you can see, we can still hover over the turret icon. So inside of the turret icon sprite, let's go to events and actually stop other scripts in sprite once it receives the close shop message, and that way it stops doing its scripts inside of the open shop. And let's do the same inside of the turret description sprite. So once it receives close shop, then stop other scripts in sprite. So let's try it out. When the shop is open, then our description works, and then once the shop is closed, the description does not show up anymore. Alright, cool. So let's try this game out. I'm going to purchase 2 turrets, and I'm also going to hide these variables. Okay. Now let's continue on the game to check if everything works. Alright. Let's purchase our 3rd turret if we can. Oops, okay. We are 1 money short, but now we have enough money, and we can place our 3rd turret and continue on our game. Alright, cool. So now we have our completely working turret shop. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too if you haven't already. Bye. By the way, this project is shared on my Scratch profile. Link is in the description below. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. See ya!